On this note, it's my great pleasure to introduce our opening keynote, the Honourable Simon Kofe. Simon Kofe is a Tuvaluan politician, lawyer, and global advocate for climate action. He currently serves as Tuvalu's Minister for Transport, Energy, Communication, and Innovation, and has previously held portfolios including justice, communication, and foreign affairs. Trained in law in the Pacific, Minister Kofe has been instrumental in advancing Tuvalu's digital transformation through the Future New project, which is working to safeguard Tuvalu's sovereignty, culture, and governance systems in the face of rising seas. He gained international recognition at COP26, where he delivered a speech standing knee-deep in seawater to illustrate the existential threat of climate change to low-lying islands, a moment that powerfully captured global attention. His leadership has always been central to global efforts, such as advocating for a shipping carbon levy and reimagining statehood in international law. Beyond politics, he's deeply committed to youth empowerment, sports development, and community service, truly embodying Tuvalu's values of resilience, innovation, and collective responsibility. I'd also like to acknowledge special guests, His Excellency, Mr. Feawe Tipu, Tuvalu's High Commissioner, and his First Secretary, Mr. Niwani Eliwai, and Simon's personal assistant, Milanetta Tulito. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable Simon Kofe.
Good morning and talofa to everyone. I first want to start by paying my respect to the owners and custodians of the land that we are meeting on. Malu ka tō koutou I te taia malu denei whawhtailas. Firstly, thank you very much for the invitation, and it is a great honor for me to be here to talk a little bit about Tuvalu's Haerenga, our journey as a nation, with the hope that perhaps it might add some different perspective to the theme of the conference this week. I come from a very small country in the Pacific, Tuvalu. I'm assuming that some of you may not know where that is, but it's, I think, dead center between Australia and the US. We usually like to use Fiji as the reference point because a lot of people know where Fiji is. We're just north of Fiji. And if you don't know where Fiji is, then okay, you need to go back to geography class. But we're low-lying islands. The average height above sea level is 2 meters above sea level. We're coral and atoll islands, made up of eight islands in the Pacific. And as was mentioned by earlier in the introduction, we are at the forefront of the climate crisis, given the vulnerabilities that we face at the moment, in particular with sea level rise. And scientists are predicting that on the course that we're on right now, that Tuvalu could be fully submerged by sea in a matter of decades. And so as a country, we are preparing for that crisis through advocacy, advocating on the international stage for countries to take stronger climate action, but also through the different initiatives in Tuvalu, both in terms of adaptation, building seawalls, reclaiming land. And another sort of approach or initiative that we've undertaken is this Future Now project, which I'll be talking to you today. As mentioned, I'm a minister, and I looked at those that are present here. I couldn't see politicians up in the list there, but I don't know if your politicians are the same as our politicians in Tuvalu. You never give them the floor; they'll never stop talking. But I've been given some time frames, so I'll stick to the times that you have given me. And I'm going to talk about a project that we launched in 2021, which is, as you see up there, the Future Now project. And it is Tuvalu's plan for the worst case scenario. And as I mentioned, the worst case could be a country without a physical territory in the future. And so how are we preparing as a country for that scenario? Obviously, God willing, that never happens, and we adapt and defend our islands. But in case, and I think every responsible government needs to have a backup plan, a plan B, in case all fails. And so this is part of our. It's a backup plan, but it's as I talk about it, you hear the benefits for the country, even if you do have a physical territory. And the best case scenario for us is that we have a nation, a physical, but also a digital nation, which is a concept that I'm going to be talking to you about today. So the Future Now project was launched in 2021. This was in the last government when I held the portfolio of Justice, Communications and Foreign Affairs portfolio. And under our new government, they came into office last year, February. We've carried on this project. So it's a great honor for me to be leading this project as well under the new government. All right, so under this project, there are three key initiatives, and I'll talk about each one of them today. The first is looking at Tuvaluan values. And in the Pacific, there are, we have very unique cultural practices. Some are very similar across the different islands, Fiji, Samoa, Tongan. There are some common values across the Pacific. But there are things that are also very unique to the countries. And I always like to start with values, because behind every practice, behind every cultural practice, there's a principle, there's a value that underpins that way of life. And sometimes we can learn the practices and we lose the value or the principle, the meaning behind that particular practice. And this is becoming more and more important in a day where our borders are open. There's a flow of different values coming into the country. And we actually encourage to be open, to understand what's happening in the world. We encourage modernization. That's something that we want to embrace. But at the same time, you cannot lose your values. And I'll talk today a little bit about Tuvaluan values and how important it is to our journey as a nation, but also our journey as a digital nation, which is one of the initiatives that I'll touch on later on. The second initiative looks at statehood. I'll discuss a little bit about this, and these are all interlinked, because in order to be a state under international law, you need a physical territory, you need a government, you need a population. And so if we were to look purely at that definition in terms of what's happening in Tuvalu with the climate crisis, there's question marks about whether a state can actually exist without a physical territory. And so that's a legal question, and we've done a lot of work as well on the international stage, and I'll touch on a little bit about that. And this flows on to this digital nation idea, because if international law recognizes nations like Tuvalu that are affected by climate change, recognize their statehood is permanent regardless of the impacts of climate change, then there has to be some sort of framework that represents the nation of Tuvalu. And this is what that framework is, the digital nation. It represents everything that is Tuvalu, from both the governance side of things, but also how we use technology to preserve culture. And I think that might be a bit more of interest to the group that is here today. So I'll work through these. Do I have a timer somewhere so I can keep an eye? Feel free to tell me to stop. I'm very happy to stop whenever. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Tuvaluan values. And one of the best places to look if you want to know about Tuvaluan values is the Tuvalu Constitution. The Tuvalu Constitution, we were formerly a British colony, and we became independent in 1978. And when we became independent, the British gave us a constitution. So it didn't necessarily reflect the values and the sort of the way of life in the islands. And it wasn't until 1986 there was a review of the constitution, and values were put into the constitution. And you see that throughout the the preamble of the Constitution. And it talks about different values, but it also says that the stability of Tuvaluan society and the happiness and welfare of the people of Tuvalu, both present and future, depend very largely on the maintenance of Tuvaluan values, culture, and tradition, including the vitality and the sense of identity of island communities and attitudes of cooperation, self-help, and unity within and amongst those communities. So if you look at, I mean, that's a sort of a package of values. It tells you the kind of community that exists in Tuvalu. There's great emphasis on communal collection of interest. So if you look at things like land tenure, for example, land is owned by clans, different families, and we all share responsibility over our assets, over our resources, but we also carry a sense of responsibility to one another. So if you were to ask me, define Tuvalu communities, that's how it's defined. It saved me the work of defining it because our Constitution already defines those things. So some of those values are respect, self-help, consensus building, cooperation, family discipline, and unity. And so these are very important values that also are very important today when we're seeing there are things that are happening within communities and within our societies, breakdown within families, lack of discipline of children. So these are things that serve as guiding principles for Tuvalu. And so as we undertake as a government to look at how we digitize artifacts, look at capturing our history and our story, we want to ensure that these values are at the forefront of everything that we do as a government and as a people. And so I'm very thankful to our forefathers who put this in the Constitution. In 2023, we adopted a new Constitution, and I was serving as the chair of the parliamentary committee that looked at the review of the Constitution. This work was in the pipeline for about 8 years. It's a very long time. It went through the span of 2 parliamentary terms. And for those of you who knew politics, sometimes it's very difficult to get things through Parliament, not because it's a difficult issue, but sometimes it could purely be just a political thing. We don't like the government because they're doing something new. A new government comes in, let's pause that. But finally, we managed to get the review of the Constitution done, and we adopted the Constitution of 2023 that captures everything that was put in there in 1986 in regards to the values and principles. But we decided to go a further step in operationalizing those values and those principles, not just as things that we aspire for as in the preamble, but to actually place these things in the body of the Constitution that requires the courts to ensure that they are acknowledging these values, and these values are being applied in every case that is being considered before the court. And so we came up with what we call a charter of duties and responsibilities. And so this is, I don't know, if you have time, you can Google search our Constitution and have a look at that particular section. But it essentially just looks at defining the responsibilities of individuals, children, to obey, to follow, parents, to teach, to be responsible, not to neglect, leaders, the responsibility to look out for the people, to ensure that you are putting others before yourself. And I think that's a very important reminder for us politicians. So we've put these things in the Constitution with the hope that these balance out other things that are in the Constitution. And as you know, human rights is something that is also in our Constitution, something that we adopted from the British. These responsibilities go hand in hand with human rights, with rights of individuals. Because I think what we've seen in the past in the islands, and this was an issue when we were discussing the Constitution, is that people placing so much emphasis on their rights, and it was kind of creating this culture of entitlement, and people neglecting their responsibilities. And so we decided to put this in and say, listen, whenever a matter is being considered, the court must consider responsibilities, because we live in a community where we are connected, where our actions as individuals affect others. And if you actually think about it, if people are responsible, when parents are responsible, then you allow the children to grow up in an environment that is safe and nurturing for that child. You can shout all you want about children's rights, but if parents are not responsible, which is, I believe, is the source of the child's right, then you get nowhere. And so we've taken an angle that is based on our culture, based on how things have been done for centuries in the islands, something that people are very familiar with, resonates with Tuvaluans. And so that's a very, I guess, unique, not many constitutions you'll find in the world that talks about these things, responsibilities, duties and responsibilities. All right, so I talked about operationalizing these principles, these cultural values, and I'm talking about this, and I'm going to lead to things that we're doing in the digital space. But it's very important that we emphasizing values so that you have a better understanding of the context in the islands. And so in the last term, we looked at developing our foreign policy of 2020, which is called the Sikulangi. Sikulangi is the horizon in the Tuvaluan language. And so we looked at, when we were developing this policy, we started, I mean, the vision and the idea that I had was, how do we bring culture? How do we bring these values into our policies, into our legislation as a government? And so we started discussing with the people, had consultations, and there was a question that was asked of me when we were doing this consultation was, what is the relevance of our culture to our foreign policy, to our foreign affairs, to the international stage? There's always this perception that these values and these principles are only practiced inside of the community. When you come and step into government, you put on a different hat and you act like how you expect it to act, as we see around the world. It's about national interest, it's about competition, it's about pushing your way, getting what is best for the country, regardless of the impact on others. And so we took a very different look at foreign policy and say, we have to be authentic as a people. How we carry ourselves on the international stage has to reflect who we are as a people. We can't just change hats because it's how people conduct themselves in that space. And so I said that my answer to that question was that the world has become like a community. We're so interconnected. We've spent decades removing trade barriers, integrating our economies to the extent that we've now become so vulnerable to each other's actions. This is why when things are happening, wars in Ukraine can affect prices and inflation, even in a very remote place like Tuvalu. It affects us on a day-to-day basis. And that's because we've become like a single community. And so my response was that this is the context that we find ourselves in 2025. We're interconnected, we're a community, but people and nations are still behaving like individuals, like they don't exist in a connected world. And this is why I felt that these values are so important, because we've lived in community for centuries. We know that in order to exist in that kind of context, you have to be responsible, you have to be respectful, you have to consider the impact of your actions on other people. For you to enter that context and be individualistic, putting your interests before others, it affects the whole structure. And so this is where in our foreign policy we looked at operationalizing these cultural concepts, ideas, and principles in that particular context. So if you look into our foreign policy, you will see principles such as the Olanga Whakawhenua, which is communal living systems, Kaitasi, which is family clans that eat together. Kai is to eat, Tasi is one, eating as one. So if you're part of a Kaitasi of a particular clan, you share in the resources of the land, but you also have a responsibility to ensure sustainability of the, using those resources. And Falepili is if you literally translate it, Fale is house, Pili is close. So houses that are in close proximity to each other in the islands, there's an implied responsibility to look out for your neighbor. And children are, in a village, they're free to run around and play within that neighborhood. And the safety of those children is dependent on all the houses in that particular area. So the Falepili concept is being a good neighbor. And so we've brought these into the foreign policy. And there are other examples that I won't go into that looks at how we operationalize these principles and these values. And so it's been a few years that we've been promoting these principles with the hope that it can give other countries, I guess, a broader sight of the implication of how they're conducting themselves on the international stage. And this is why global challenges like climate change requires us to look at the bigger picture. Because sometimes we're very narrow, we focus on immediate economic gains, but then we're not looking at the implication of that on the environment, on the climate, and how it's going to affect future generations. And so it's very important that we continue to advocate these things with the hope that the world will get its act together. If it doesn't, it still doesn't affect how we carry ourselves, and that's the main thing. We're in control of ourselves, and we feel that this is a duty on us to continue to advocate and share these things with the world. So let's move on now to statehood. So if you recall, there were the three initiatives: values, statehood, and digital nation. So this idea of statehood, this is more a legal discussion. I'm not sure if this is something that is more interesting. I know the more interesting one for people is the digital nation. But the statehood, as I said, there's a convention called the Montevideo Convention that was passed in I think it might have been in the 30s, that looks at defining statehood. And there's a criteria for statehood. As I mentioned earlier, it has an effective government that is in control, it has a population, and it has a physical territory. And so if you were to look at the criteria, and Tuvalu loses its physical territory, then it could also lose its status as a state under international law. And statehood is actually very important. Obviously, both as a nation, you want to maintain and retain your identity on the international stage. But there are certain rights that are linked to statehood as well. Your right to be part of international organizations like the United Nations, your right to participate. And there are also other sovereign assets that are linked to your status as a state. You have maritime zones because you're a state. You have a physical territory, you have maritime zones. You have rights to resources within that space. The other very unique one as well that is making a lot of money for Tuvalu every year is this internet domain name. You know how countries are assigned domain names? Here in New Zealand is .nz, Australia is .au, Tuvalu is .tv, and .tv is actually very popular because it's associated with television, online streaming. So people like to buy out .tv because it represents those things. And we're very blessed, and it's making us millions, making us millions every year. And so so when we talk about statehood, it's really important to also retain those rights and those benefits that comes with that. But the way we've approached this is to look at how we can redefine statehood under international law. What we're saying is that a state is more than what you see in the physical. A state represents a people, a culture, a history. It's their sense of identity as a people. And so we're trying to kind of expand on that definition. And so this was something we looked at in our constitution. And we decided to redefine statehood in our constitution. If you look into our constitution, it says that the state of Tuvalu, within its historical, cultural, and legal framework, shall remain in perpetuity in the future, notwithstanding the impacts of climate change or other causes resulting in loss to the physical territory of Tuvalu. So this is what we're saying in our constitution. Constitution is the highest law in Tuvalu, and it's probably the strongest policy statement a country can make. is putting it in the Constitution. So that was put in our 2023 Constitution. But as you know, it doesn't matter what you say as a country, it's how other countries perceive you. Other countries need to recognize that you are a state. And if you look back in history, countries have not always followed that strict criteria that I was telling you about in the Montevideo Convention. There were times, this idea of government in exiles, if you've heard about that. In World War II, the Germans occupied certain of the Western countries, but the Allies continued to recognize those governments in exile. There are a few examples, and so what we're trying to say is, it's not necessarily following the criteria, it's how countries behave and whether or not they recognize you as a country. So we came up with this brilliant idea and putting in our policy, our foreign policy, that we're going to insist that any country that wants to form relations with Tuvalu, they must recognize the statehood of the nation as permanent and its existing maritime boundaries as set, even if Tuvalu loses its land territory due to sea level rise. So, countries always like to be friends with other countries when they're advancing their interests. Well, this was what we had put forward. And we signed up to around 25 countries signed joint communiques with us, recognizing this particular principle. And it went further. The Pacific Island Forum leaders in 2023 adopted a declaration saying that the statehood of its members shall continue and the rights and duties inherent thereto will be maintained, notwithstanding the impacts of climate change. So the region has adopted this definition, which is great because New Zealand is part of the Pacific Island Forum. So through that, New Zealand also recognizes that particular principle. So thank you, New Zealand, for that. And also Australia. Australia is also part of that. But Australia went a further step and signed a treaty with us called the Whalepili. If any of you have heard of that, the Whalepili Union Treaty, named after this concept in our foreign policy. And there are a lot of things inside of that treaty, but one of those things is Australia recognizing this principle. It's gained momentum over the recent year. Other countries in other parts of the world, the Caribbean, Africa, have also come on board and recognized this principle. The recent ICJ decision, I don't know if any of you follow that, ICJ decision on the obligations of state to address climate change. The judges also go into this particular principle and recognizes this principle that countries that are affected by climate change may continue to retain their status as a state under international law. So it started off as a national initiative, but it's become something that is being adopted. So I would say that we've achieved it to some extent. All right. So leading on from that idea, we launched the campaign in 2022, I think. The Digital Nation. We launched the Digital Nation initiative, and that campaign actually reached 2.3 billion people around the world. And we started that campaign with $0 at all. It was me standing in front of, well, it looked like an island, but it was a virtual island. You can find that on YouTube. I was delivering a speech to COP. This was after the video in the water. This video was I was standing on a virtual island, and I was delivering a speech. And I talked about launching the Digital Nation of Tuvalu as a campaign to raise awareness about the impacts of climate change on countries like Tuvalu. So as the camera zooms out, my background begins to glitch. Trees, you begin to see the glitches in the trees. So people begin to recognize, oh, this is not an actual island. This is a digital island. So that campaign, it's won a lot of awards. We never expected it to have that impact. But it certainly has gained a lot of interest, particularly from people in the digital space. We also, as part of that campaign, we say that it is the first digital nation. Don't be misled. First is not saying that we are very advanced in terms of our technology and what we're doing. No, that's not That's not the message. The message is that Tuvalu could actually exist, be the first to exist, fully online, and could be one of the first that operates without a physical territory. So first in that sense. Not that we are more advanced than other countries in terms of the digital transformation journey. In fact, we only got our first submarine cable. It was launched, it arrived in December, and it began operations just 2 weeks ago. And that is probably the most important infrastructure for us, because it is the backbone of the internet. And it then now allows us to build everything that we're going to talk about here, about the digital nation. The digital nation, if you look there are 3 layers to the digital nation. The first layer is looking at technology and digital services, things like e-government, digital government services, citizen digital identity. Because the way I define digital nation is a country that has fully migrated all its administrative and government services online to allow it to operate remotely. And so this is linked back to this idea of the future now, preparing for the worst case scenario. God forbid something happens or a disaster. It might affect things that we do manually in the physical, but if you have a digital nation, you've migrated your services online, then it allows you to be more resilient, more responsive in times of crisis. So that's the idea of the digital nation. Another layer of the digital nation is looking at digital twins, which is an interactive virtual spatial environment. And with this, we're able to simulate environmental challenges, raising awareness about climate change, allowing the world to add a tissue here, sorry, excuse me. So give me a tissue, please. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. New Zealand is really cold. I've never experienced this kind of cold in my life. But where were we? So we're talking about the digital twins. And this allows us to recreate the physical island of Tuvalu in the digital. And we look at different platforms where we're able to create virtual copies of the islands. And we do this by carrying out LiDAR mapping of the islands. And there are some resources that are online that people could also look at. But the value of creating this digital twin is not only captures Tuvalu as it exists today, but as I said, it allows us to forecast even the impacts of climate change on the islands. We could also put in any sort of data that we collect on the island. For example, fishing activities that are occurring in Tuvalu's EEZ, that sort of data can be put in that space. And I think Wellington is leading in that space. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much. So Wellington has actually got this a digital version, and you could see like trains where they're moving in real time. You can actually see it in that space. So this is actually a good place to be making those connections and networks with people here. But it's also a space that allows people from outside to experience Tuvalu, to see what it's like. We're very small, so we can't always accommodate all of you coming to Tuvalu. But you can see Tuvalu, a virtual copy at least of the islands. And the other layer of the digital nation is the digital ark, which is a living archive of culture, flora, and fauna. And I'll share a short clip, a 3-minute clip later on, that looks at a youth workshop that we carried out, where we trained young people how to use just their mobile phones at capturing 3D models of artifacts, things that are of sentimental value to them, and to put it on this platform called the Digital Arc. This used to be called Digital Archive, and after my presentation in NDF 2022 or 23 here in Wellington, I came up with this idea of changing it to Arc, rather than calling it Archive, calling it a Digital Arc. And yeah, it seems that, well, the best ideas comes when I'm in Wellington. So I won't bore you with this stuff, the digital government stuff. But let's jump straight into to this. So the Digital Arc is related to the story of Noah. You know, the Ark, when he built the Noah's Ark, it was a vessel that was created for the crisis, and it was a vessel that preserved life. And we thought that maybe this Ark that we're creating, the Digital Ark, is something that can capture our history and our stories and preserve the spirit and the soul of the country. Even if you were to take away a physical, these things that are intangible are just important to Tuvaluans, wherever they are in the world. So the digital nation idea serves different purposes. It's a 3D record of how Tuvaluan appears today, as I said, a place for Tuvaluans to stay connected. It is an archive of history and culture. So for me, this Digital Arc is not a passive platform. We made it in such a way that it is also a tool for nation building, to inspire young people as they look into their history, as they look into the stories of our ancestors and how they struggled, how they sacrificed in order for us to have a nation. And yeah, that's how I see this, the value of this Digital Arc. And we started with a youth workshop earlier this year, training young people, as I said, using mobile phones to capture artifacts. And it was actually very interesting, some of the things that the young people came through. I mean, you'd be amazed at the ideas and the creativity of these young people. And I feel that you know, every generation has something to offer. Our elders, of course, the wisdom, we always need to follow their advice and the wisdom they offer. But with young people, they have the energy, the passion. You know, when they put their minds to something, they can really do great things. And I was really inspired by the work of these young people. And I'll play a short clip. Right, so that was a correction I made in the last Wellington meeting. I crossed off archive and used Arc. So let me just jump on this video clip, and then I'll maybe spend 2 or 3 minutes to close us off.
My item is this weave jacket. This jacket was weaved using a traditional technique passed through many generations. For the first Prime Minister of Tuvalu, the Honourable Simon Kofe, and it was on the very first celebration of Tuvalu's independence that he wore this very jacket. This item is not just a representation of craftsmanship. It represents how Tuvalu started its journey. So, ang naman ako ka-preserve at check at na me se me tawa just not get the history, but ilunga foki tu mga ano Tuvalu me pamise me na pamise poto yo me se lo tato tila ko se lo atulo yom ko pilipili lo ngalo atu.
And everything, whatever little money we receive in aid, is also spent on the headquarters, you know, not all the islands of the Gilberts, all the other islands are the same as us, but at least it was spent in Kiribati. That was one of the other reasons why our people thought, well, all the money spent there. And now with the scholarships, now they come with the policy of, say, 1 Tuvalu to 7 Gilbertines, if they go out. If they do that, then we are nothing, so we decided to ask for separation.
And the main values loa pa me lelo na mo tempo poliking aloa. Tasi ko te kau whakatasi, whai mea tasi ka e whakatawa lofa pela me se kāinga. Lua ko te taumawhai, ko te hard work, ka e kuwhaki, ko te mea ke okokoe ki te mea tamana ko ke koe. And lastly, te la ko te te mea tawa loa ko te atua, ona la mea e se tangata e lotu, ka e fia ki te atua.
Te mea e lawe ne au ba tinga i te whaingata. Kai lawe fuki neo me mātsei fuala ko mātou. Pēnā fuki tino ko nā neo mai talapa. E ilo neo ne olo ka 24 hours iti mea katoa e toka ne. Kai mai kone se ai loa. Kamatalo mai te se ai lo ki te se ai tēnā fuki lo i te whātele tēla. Se ai ne sene. Toi mai tātou neo mai lom te niwanga. Niwanga tā tasi. Tēnā lo tōkope. Mo te kilonga lo te la peretani. Tātou e se kātou te whia masina, tātou ko whiti ki tua, tātou ko whuki atu. Kai puri aia me Tuvalu ne.
It means 8 standing together. And traditionally, 8 is a lucky number for Tuvalu.
All right, that's a shortened version of the documentary of what we had, one of the participants at that youth workshop. And we were actually quite shocked when she brought this into the workshop and wanted to capture it because the first Prime Minister was her great-grandfather. And yeah, so it was an excellent item to capture. Yeah, and as I said, these things, it can be used as a nation-building tool because it's not something that you just deposit, but it's important to get the story and the values, the thing that people carried in their hearts many years ago. And that inspires the new generation to say, listen, our forefathers sacrificed a lot for this nation. How much more should we, now that we have more resources now, .tv, how much more we today use that to improve life for Tuvaluans, whether you're in Tuvalu or living overseas. So I guess I wanted to leave you with that message, and thank you very much for your attention this morning. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, Q&A, right. Don't ask hard questions, please.
Testing. There? Better? Yes. All right, great. Minister Kofe, thank you so much for that really wonderful talk. Part of the benefit of getting to moderate the Q&A is that you get to ask your own questions first. Digital sovereignty is a hot topic of conversation here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Without physical territory, how do you ensure that your data remains yours and not subject to other jurisdictions?
Right, so that's a very important question that we've also considered. We've looked at different ways that we can ensure the control over our data. There's this idea that we have of obviously having servers locally in country, but we also have this idea of building it out in different countries for redundancy. And one of the ideas that we have is looking at how we can build this out in our embassies in different countries. So, as you know, under international law, your embassy is considered international territory. It belongs to that country. So it has immunity as well from the laws of the host country. So we've looked at different platforms and looked at how we can create that architecture, possibly looking at the blockchain technology and looking at how these servers that we build out in different embassies can support the digital nation. As I said, we're quite early on in our journey. As I said, our submarine cable just came online 2 weeks ago. And everyone's excited about the fast internet now that we're experiencing in Tuvalu. And they're saying that it's actually the fastest in the world per capita because there's only a few of us. So there's another first for the first digital nation. We have some of the fastest internet in the world because there's only a few of us using it. But that infrastructure, as I said, now unlocks and enables us to do what we've been talking about for some time now, the digital nation. We can actually implement these things. But it's how we use that fast internet, because I know especially our young people, we're so used to just consuming content, what is created in other parts of the world. But as part of this work that we're doing with the young people is creating that innovation from within the island so that we can develop our own local content. And this is what the digital arc is a representation of.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Andrew Kelly. Can you see Tuvaluan society, culture and values continue as a non-geographic nation state with its people living unbound by geography, with no borders, sharing the same physical space with many others, using the digital arc to guide it?
Yeah, 100%. As I said, the way we look at statehood is not limited to what you have in the physical. Because these are intangible things that are carried in the heart of every person. So a Tuvaluan living and growing up in New Zealand can connect to the digital nation, access the services, learn about the language. And this is something that we've been connecting with our diaspora, young people that are born and bred overseas and wanting to learn the culture and the language. We create this platform and give them that access. When Tuvaluans leave and live overseas, they carry on their cultural practices, especially when there's a lot of them in a particular city. But then there are those that move to regional isolated areas. For them, that's where the challenge is, not having that connection and interaction with other people. And so we hope that this offers a solution for them.
Thank you. This is a technical crowd, so we have some technical questions about how you are preserving the digital arc content for the long term, including things like you've made reference to some of the redundancy that you've built in with other infrastructure. So if you could talk a bit more to that.
Yep. With what we've captured at the youth workshop, we were using a better version at the moment. As I said, we're still exploring something that is more permanent, moving into the future. But we're also developing the protocols and you know how people feel about what they want to offer. So you know we create a space. People don't necessarily have to give. We don't want to force people to give anything. They have to come freely. And there are certain items and stories that they want to keep just for themselves, for their families. There are certain things that are not meant to be shared. But we also want to create that space for them so that they don't lose that, whether it's an artifact or whatever, that they want to preserve.
That's great. Thank you. There are also many non-technical people among us, and we are all people after all. So how does the government support citizens coping with such loss mentally, socially, physically?
Yeah, you know, with climate change, it's something that occurs gradually, and you know, Tuvaluans, I mean, we're a resilient people. We survive with almost nothing, and you know, you saw that documentary about you know, the British. No offense to the British, but they thought that we could not survive, and our leaders back then said, well, we've lived on coconuts and fish for centuries. How can we not survive? And it's that kind of spirit and resilience that is in every Tuvaluan. Probably not as strong now as it was back in the days, but that's the mission now, is to kind of strengthen that again. Yeah, sorry, I may have forgot your question again.
Oh, just how does the country and how does the government
Right.
to support people who are wrestling with this very real
Yep.
climate change and,
Yep.
and loss of yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have services that are provided by the government, counseling, that we support Tuvaluans, and we also have support for Tuvaluans that are migrating overseas. Some are migrating here to New Zealand, but also under our new treaty with Australia. There are people migrating to Australia as well. So our missions in those countries provide support to Tuvaluans. I know it can be a culture shock for some of them coming to a different country. But I think for me personally, I'm trying to inspire people to stay in Tuvalu. The country needs people to build. And so we want to inspire people growing up, people that are skilled and talented to contribute to the nation. And I mean, we have skilled people that are also coming back. Some of them working overseas for many years, and now see the value of actually coming back and contributing to the country. And these sorts of workshops and what we're doing with the young people is that, encouraging them to build the nation.
How are you thinking about digital citizenship into the future in terms of children born after a potential loss of the physical state?
Okay, so I didn't go into those slides about the sort of the e-governance and what we're doing within the government, because we are going through this process of digitizing our processes, whether it be with the different registries that we have, the birth, marriage registries. These things we're doing because it improves services. It makes services more accessible to Tuvaluans, and we're looking at creating a digital ID for verification of people. This is an important security measure to ensure that the people that are accessing government services are actually Tuvaluans. So this is going to be implemented and delivered in early next year. And as part of that, we're also integrating a payment system into our services. So our journey in terms of digitizing our government services at a very early stage, and it only improves over time.
Thank you. What role do you see the Tuvalu National Library and Archives playing in the digital nation?
Yeah, I mean, we're working with the library and archives at the moment. I'm not sure if many of you have been to Tuvalu, but it needs a lot of work, the building itself. But we've digitized a lot of our records in Tuvalu, in the archives. This was with support from overseas as well. So we're also very thankful to our partners that supported that project many years ago. So it is accessible to Tuvaluans, but there is one of our priorities as a government. We're building a new building for the library and archives. So our hope is that the work that we're doing in digitizing as well other things in the archives is also bring it onto this platform.
How can we, as the digital preservation community, crowd, support your initiatives in Future Now? Donations, volunteering, marketing, what can we do to help?
Yeah, well, I'm not a technical person. I'm a politician. So we do need your technical expertise. I mean, if you're looking at what we're doing and you're saying, oh, there's a better way of doing that, I mean, we're also very open to new ideas. As I said, this project was funded by the government of Tuvalu because we felt that we wanted to take ownership of this as well, to ensure that we're developing in the way that Tuvaluans wanted it to be developed. We wanted Tuvaluans to tell their own stories. So we've been also very careful in the funding. So if we're looking at like-minded partners who see the value of what we're doing and they want to offer the support, whether through technical or whether it's funding, that would certainly go a long way in moving our work forward.
Kind of a related and secondary question to that is, are there similar initiatives that you're aware of for other countries in the Pacific? And are you engaged in any collaborations around that sort of mutual continuation of statehood or things like that?
In terms of in other countries, as I said, the Pacific Island Forum Leaders Declaration, I mean, that's a regional position that the forum has taken. No, I'm not too familiar with what's happening, but I mean, there are things that are happening in Fiji as well, and we're collaborating with Fiji as well. They've done a lot of good work as well in collecting data and information from the people as well. I think they're more advanced in terms of the protocols that they've developed, and I mean, we've been talking to them as well. So I mean, we're open to connect with people and organizations.
Thank you. How are you preparing for the potential for cybersecurity risks when bringing your nation's entire culture and community into this digital space?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that keeps me up at night, thinking about the security and safety of the nation, and obviously my kids as well. My kids are always online as well, and it's important to have those measures in place. We've invested millions of dollars for cybersecurity, ensuring that we're having those measures up particularly at the ISP level. Yeah, so that's something we're doing at the moment. I talked a little bit about the blockchain. That's also a very secure system that we're looking at implementing. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword when you look at connectivity. On the one hand, everyone's celebrating and excited about the internet speed, but we also have to be careful. And some of the vulnerabilities is not so much a system. You can build really good, robust systems, but the awareness of the people as well is also very important. And so we're raising awareness across the nation as well in terms of safe usage of the internet, particularly for our young people.
Okay, I think we've got two left. So the first is, how does your status as a digital nation impact contractual agreements with companies in nations that have not yet recognized Tuvalu's constitutional framing of statehood? So thinking about third parties, commercial partners. Yeah,
so Tuvalu is still a physical territory, so that's not a problem. So the digital nation is something that we build alongside the physical nation. So we're still a sovereign state, and everything that we do in the digital space is recognized because it's linked to a sovereign nation. And one of the things that we're doing is putting our registries up in the digital space as well. With for example, marriage registries, people can get married online. That's something that can be done. And if you issue a marriage certificate from that, it's recognized because it's linked to the nation of Tuvalu. Just as you would cross to another nation with your marriage and your birth certificate, it's recognized in that country. So yeah, but I think what the question is looking at in the future, and that's something we need to ensure. And part of that is what we're doing with this issue of statehood, getting that recognition from countries, recognition that the statehood of Tuvalu is permanent, regardless of the impacts of climate change. So that's an indirect recognition of the digital nation as well. Because if you recognize Tuvalu, even without a physical territory, then you recognize it there's a representation. There has to be a representation of the country, which we're saying is a digital nation.
So this Thursday is World Digital Preservation Day. And the theme for World Digital Preservation Day this year is Why Preserve? Can you share some of the barriers, what has stood in your way, and how you've worked to get around them?
Right. So in Tuvalu, the history and the stories and the knowledge of the past is passed down through speech, through its oral tradition. And that's how it's always been done over the years. So sometimes capturing it in a different form can be challenging because it's new. It's new. We never do that. It's always been passed down from word of mouth, from grandfather to son or to grandchild. And that's actually a very effective way of passing down. Don't get me wrong. It's very effective because it carries the mana and the spirit of the person that is talking to you. But we need also to use technology to capture. I mean, there's a lot of things my grandfather told me as a child. I didn't really pay attention that much back then. But now thinking about some of the stories that he told, I thought, wow, I wish I had paid attention back then, because it's so important, those things that he's telling me. So I'm now talking to my dad and uncles, trying to put the pieces together again to the story that my grandfather told me. And, I only wish that it was captured. There was a technology to capture his stories. That would really have an impact on me and my children moving forward. So that's one of the challenges, but I think people are beginning to understand that because we're losing knowledge and stories when a person dies, not everything he said was remembered. And so we want to create this platform that allows us to capture everything for the future generations.
Thank you. I lied. I've got a couple more. And I should clarify that these are not all my questions. These are from all of you. I'm just hogging the microphone. Do you need to fight internally for acceptance, for the need for action? Unfortunately, many countries may have people who are underemphasizing or denying the effects of things like climate change. And you are living it. So have you had to face that same kind of challenge?
Internally, no. All Tuvaluans are on board. It's something because we live with it on a day-to-day basis. But externally, yes, there are countries, not going to name them, but that don't even recognize climate change as being an essential threat to countries like Tuvalu. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I try not to put my energy into things that I'm not in control of. I respect the sovereignty of other countries and leaders in terms of how they view the world. For me, it's a duty to advocate and to share our story with others. And I understand how because in the islands, we live on a small strip of land. We're surrounded by ocean. But when you're living in a city, it's very difficult to sometimes see how climate change is affecting a country. And so this is part of the reason why advocacy is very important for us, particularly in how we packaging our message so that we reach a wider audience. I mean, in the past, it's always been about these big COP meetings and trying to convince others. But the way we're packaging our message now is like, nah, let's reach the wider public. Let's reach young people because it is the people. The power is really with the people. They have the power to put people in positions. And if they know and they have a better understanding of the what's happening in the climate, and then hopefully that can translate into the kind of leaders that you select.
Thank you. Are you planning to maintain a national digital currency?
That's something we've thought about, and yeah, we may actually get into that next year. There's obviously a technology behind digital currency. There are risks, but there are also opportunities that we're going to be exploring. Some of the idea is that you have a token that is backed by your resources. So even things like the .tv can be the backing for a Tuvalu digital currency. So these are things that we've been thinking about, and maybe in the future you'll hear a development in that.
Thank you. Okay, our last question is, do you see the Digital Arc project driving an international standardization framework? You're the first people to do this sort of thing, so are you providing an example for other nations?
I'm not too sure. I mean, I don't think in that way. I think of what I can do best for my country, what I can do for the young people. We've just been fortunate that a lot of these things that we're doing has kind of gone viral and people have picked it up online. But certainly if it contributes to improving things on the international stage, we're all for it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, for your questions.
Yeah.
Before you leave,
Yep. Oh, wow.
Minister Kofe, we have a small gift for you, punamu. This represents toho, the whale's tail. The whale's tail is a symbol of protection and abundance. Whales are revered by Maori as tapu, or sacred, and as a sign of good luck for those navigating the oceans. It represents prosperity, strength, unity of family, safety, and guidance. Values that resonate deeply with your leadership and your work guiding Tuvalu's journey across uncharted seas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for participating in our morning session. We'd like to invite you now to take our morning tea and meet back here at 11 a.m. For those who are participating in the quickfire presentations, we'd like to ask you to come back here at 10:55 so that we can line you up in your presentation order. Thank you.